What's up, everybody? Lars Lindstrom here, Creative Income. We're going to do something a little bit different this week. This will be the first time I try this. First of all, I did want to mention that I am recording video now of myself. Not that you need to see my face. It's not a great face, but if you want to check it out, if YouTube's your platform, that's your thing, then head on over to Creative Income Show on YouTube, and you can watch it there. So anyway, we're going to do a little bit different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break down 4 different streams of income in this episode. And then I'm going to have examples from previous recorded episodes on those 4 different streams of income. We'll have 4 different clips from 4 different guests. So it's going to be a little fun. But first, I wanted to talk about something just a little bit different. Not that this is like a life improvement podcast or anything like that. It's not. It's a financial podcast for creatives. But I do think that there is something to be said about mental health and all that. And I did want to talk about something that reminded me, my daughter and I were driving this last week to Sonic to get a Diet Cherry Limeade, as one does. And she was looking at she's 4 years old, in the back. She's looking at her window and she's kind of just in this daze. And all of a sudden she sighs this big, deep sigh. And she says, "Oh, Dad, why can't everything be beautiful?" And I thought, do I go there? do I try to talk to this 4-year-old girl about why everything can't be beautiful? And I tried. I said, well, think about it like this, LaRue. If everything was beautiful, right? If everything were flowers, she's really into flowers. The car was flowers, the street was flowers, the house was flowers, your room was flowers, everything were flowers. Then you wouldn't appreciate flowers. You just wouldn't, right? If everything was beautiful, if everything was perfect, then you would have no appreciation for anything. It would just be bland. And I deal with this a lot in my industry as a cinematographer. I like to think of contrast that way, right? So contrast is a relationship between the dark and the light areas. And I think as artists, we can apply this many, 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 many ways. But essentially, the thing that makes an image beautiful is the relationship between the highlights and the shadows. And the same is true with life. Right? Now we're getting deep. Now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of I don't know, nuts and bolts of something. But think about it like this, all right? You've got some months that are just perfect, right? And we could apply that financially. Some months where the phone just doesn't stop ringing, you're working all the time, your investments are doing great, and everything is awesome, right? Those are your highs. Now, if it were like that all the time, I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think you wouldn't appreciate it. It would get kind of boring. And I think it would start to feel like a grind, right? You're just making all this money and you're just not taking time off to appreciate whatever, But then you have months where the phone doesn't ring and the investments tank and you've got these low lows. And in the moment, it can be really awful. But it's how we respond to those moments of elation, of wonderful excitement, when the phone is ringing constantly and we're taking all these jobs and we're making all this money and we're having fun with our families or whatever. Like it's that relationship between how we deal with those dark times and the good times that I think make life beautiful. So next time you're going through a tough month and you're just not working or things aren't working out for you, just try to just sit back, take a deep breath, and remember contrast. It's there for a reason. You're going to get through it. You just got to keep hustling. The phone will ring again. You will have work again. And things are going to go back to normal. I promise you. And also on the flip side, when the phone is ringing off the hook and you're just making tons of money and things are wonderful, sit back and appreciate it, man. Talk to your significant other, talk to your friends and just let them know how much fun you're having, how much you appreciate the good times, and then reflect upon it as you're driving to work or whatever in your Los Angeles traffic or wherever you're driving, that how much things can be great, and don't take advantage of those good times. All right. Anyway, enough of that stuff. Let's get on to today's episode. I'm trying to think. Do I have anything else I wanted to say? Reviews are slowing down on iTunes. We're up to 31 reviews. I would love it if you guys jumped on iTunes if you're getting something out of this podcast and left me a review there. it does help the algorithm of the podcast get found, especially that and sharing. If you feel so inclined, we have a lot more listeners now. There's a lot more of you that came over from different episodes. So welcome. I'm really happy to have you guys. I love teaching. This is been a very beneficial experience for me. And I know it has been for you too, because I keep hearing about it. So if you would feel so inclined, go ahead and head on over to iTunes and rate the podcast. If you aren't having a good time, if you think that there's things that I should improve on, let me know. Leave a review. If it's 2 stars, it's 2 stars, man. It's up to you. And let me know what we can do to improve it. And then share. If you're getting something out of it, social media shares, there is no better way to spread the podcast around than social media shares. And a lot of you have been really good about it. Most of you are my friends. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. For those that aren't my friends, I would love to find out about you. Go ahead and share the podcast. Tag me in it at either JLarsL on Instagram or Lars Lindstrom on Facebook or Creative Income Podcast on Instagram. And let me find you that way, and I'll follow you right on back, and we'll have a great old time together. So anyway, so that's enough of that about that. Let's jump into the 4 different streams of income as I see it. First one is a little bit obvious. It's to make more money by trading your time for dollars, right? Very simple, straightforward. You go to work, you have labor, they give you a paycheck, you go home, all right? Second way is to invest. You can invest in stock market, venture capital, cryptocurrency, if that's your thing. Any Dogecoin fans out there? Did I tell you I did Dogecoin? Not as a serious thing, of course. I think I put like $1,000 in the Dogecoin. They pumped it up. I made $2,000 profit, so it was like $3,000 total. Cashed out, and I'm one of the lucky ones. But actually, I think it's booming right now. By the time you listen to this, it'll probably be tanked. So who knows? Don't invest in Dogecoin on my suggestion, please. It's not backed by anything. There is no cap on anything. It's simply a joke, and it's hysterical to me. That's why I put some money in it, but don't take my word for it. But other cryptos, if that's your thing, if you do your research, could be a thing. Who knows? The third way to generate income, and probably my personal favorite, is to buy assets. So an asset is anything that makes you money that you don't physically have to be a part of. Very much. So I own camera equipment. As you all know, I own camera equipment. I have 2 grip and electric lighting vehicles that generate income. And that's my passion, right? I'm a cinematographer. Like, cameras are my thing. Lighting is my thing. And so for me, it just made a lot of sense to invest in what I knew that I would be using. And in times where I'm not using it, we talked about those lows, my March, for example, other people are renting it, and it's generating income simply by existing. And I don't have to be there physically. I'm not trading my time for dollars for those assets. Other assets are real estate. The episode that I'm going to share is with Mike Miller, was episode number 2. He invested in tons of real estate, and even though he had a really great business that he was a 50-50 partner on as an editor and director, in the episode that we're going to listen to, he actually mentions that he thinks he probably made just as much money owning real estate as he did his entire career at MWP. Anyway, so that's a fascinating story. We'll get to that when I share Mike's episode. The fourth and final way that I think is something that I need to be better at, and I think a lot of us could be better at, is to spend less money, which sounds really dumb, right? But that is actually a very effective way to save money. So if you can spend less and have more money as a result, not only, let's say, for example, you find out a way to cut out $5. Let's say you call AT&T and you say, you know what, I'm paying too much for my phone service. Can I get your customer retention department? They say, sure. And you end up saving $10 a month on your phone bill. All right. But you do that across the board with all your utilities and everything, and you get everything down $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year now that you have more of. The fascinating part is, if your income stays the same, your taxes don't go up. So if you made more money, if you made $1,200 more by spending your time for dollars that year, you would owe taxes on that $1,200. Now, if you simply call your customer retention hotlines for all your services and you save $1,200 a year, you don't pay taxes on that. You pay the same taxes you did the previous year, right? If you make the same amount of money, but you have $1,200 more in your pocket. So that's actually an incredibly useful tool. If you can, and I did that a couple years ago for every single one of our monthly services. I called, asked for customer retention, and I was able to talk everybody down at least 20%. I was amazed, actually. Like my internet, we were paying something like $99 a month for my internet, and I ended up getting it for something like $45 a month. It was crazy. And maybe this is, I mean, you guys can judge me if you want to. That's fine. But I would wait to get I had Frontier for my internet. And then I got a letter in the mail from Spectrum. And they were like, hey, introductory $45 a month, blah, blah, blah. So I called Frontier and I just said, hey, I just got a letter from Spectrum. And this is sounding really enticing to me. I'm not under contract with you guys. So I think I might take this deal, unless you guys could do something to match it. And you'd be surprised. Most of them will just go, sure. I did the same thing with ADT, my security company. Called them up and said, I was looking at this Simply Safe stuff, and they're doing $15 a month. And they said, well, you're at $42 a month now. Why don't we get you down to $27? It's like, yes, half. That sounds great. Let's do it. Anyway, I was just amazed at how willing the customer retention hotlines were to work with you, to get those numbers down, and to make it so that it made more sense. And I saved more money that year. And I think I continue to save money because of that. Anyway, try something like that. So yeah, let's jump into these little snippets of episodes. I want to start with making more income. The first person I want to play a clip from was episode 14. It was Cole Walliser. He's, if you don't know him, you just type in Cole on Instagram and it'll fill in Walliser. I'm positive he's got when I recorded the episode, he had 1.4 million followers. At now, actually, let's look it up. Cole Walliser. He has 2.2 million. I released that episode a month ago, you guys. Think about how crazy that is. In a month, he had 600,000 new followers on Instagram, simply by doing what he does best. And he's going to talk about that in this little snippet. So here we go.
But it wasn't until 2017 that I started to look into the future on what the world of media and social media was going to be. And it was very clear to me that we are only moving more in that direction. We're only moving more online, more digital, more social media. And I was kind of like, okay, in 2017, I'd been in the DJ for a few years. I had my career as a director. I've done a bunch of cool music videos and short content things or whatever. And I was confident in my career. I was like, okay, I could ignore social and I feel like I would still work and I would be fine. It wasn't like I was getting any percentage of my jobs through social. But I sort of, like I said, looked to the future and was like, okay, where are we going? And I realized that it was inevitable that we were all going more online. And I said to myself, okay, I could either do this now and really pay attention and really incorporate social media as an aspect of my career, or I could do it in 5 years when I'm way behind the curve and I'm forced to do it. Because it's going to happen no matter what.
Wow.
And so in 2017, I made the conscious choice to incorporate social media as a facet of my career and spent time on it like I spend time on other facets of my career. And it has paid off in multiple times over for the effort that I put into it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you build that audience? I mean, what kind of content were you putting out there? How did you know at first how to get people's attention?
It was unclear, and I still think it still is a little unclear. I mean, I got lucky with this thing that I direct called the GlamBot, which is inherently the perfect short form viral video content. But I should say that it took me a couple years to figure it out, because I started directing the GlamBot in 2016, but it wasn't until 2018, 2019 that I understood how to make content to capitalize on that job. I was doing the GlamBot for 2 or 3 years before I figured out how to make it be cool social content. And then I started doing it, So it wasn't my idea. Which I think is really fascinating. And I actually love that it wasn't your idea. I mean, it's whatever. But what I love is that you figured out a way to take
something that someone had hired you for, right? And it could, maybe your day rate, you know, was like a few $1,000 a day or something like that. But what you were able to do was figure out a way to put the content onto those social platforms and build an audience that way. So talk to me about how that came about, because you said you were doing it for 2 years before you were really able to go, oh, I have an idea. Let's build my own audience here. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, you know, the first couple years I was doing it, and I would like post the finished GlamBots on my social and be like, oh, I directed this thing, you know, with the Stranger Things kids and you know, whoever else I was directing back then. And I was like, I always felt it was cool, but like, you know, it wasn't really getting much attention, like mostly because E was putting out the same clips and like they had all the stuff on their feed. And so like, I'm just in some sense reposting their same content. There was no draw really. Like it made people aware of that I was the guy doing it, but like, no, I didn't get any extra attention on my social because I'm like making the same content. Right.
Yeah.
At one point, so I you know, and I kept thinking like, this is a really cool job. Like I'm directing all these different big celebrities, like these A-listers, like I'm shooting like 20 or 30 in a day. I have all this cool content. And I was like, nobody really cares. You know what I mean? Like it's not really doing anything for my career. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, I always felt it was cool, but I was like, I don't know, like the awareness isn't really there for what I'm doing. Right. And then so at one point, it might've been at the Oscars in 2018. And Jackie Chan came up, and like I've been a huge Jackie Chan fan forever. And so there's a bunch of people that work on the GlamBot. We have one producer that's sort of with me at all times. And so I handed her my phone. I was like, hey, can you get a couple of pictures? Or like, maybe I'm going to ask Jackie for a picture. Can you just like be ready? Because I'm a big fan of his or whatever. So she ended up taking a bunch of BTS stills. I didn't have enough guts to ask him for a photo, but she ended up taking a bunch of BTS stills, and I think she did a BTS video, just filming the process a little bit of like behind the scenes that went on, right? Yeah. I think I ended up handing her the phone a couple times for some of the bigger celebrities because it's like, oh, these are so cool. Maybe it was my first Oscars, and I was like, oh, this is so awesome. Like, I need to document this for my own. Yeah, super casual, right? Just first Oscars.
Yeah. Oh, it was my first Oscars. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, totally. But I think I handed her the phone a couple times, and then I was coming home, and I was like going to go post the normal GlamBots that I post, and I was going through my phone, and I was like, oh, I have all these cool behind-the-scenes photos of like me and Jackie Chan, and I was like, and I have this behind-the-scenes video of the GlamBot. Now, if you don't know, so the GlamBot, it shoots, you know, we shoot 1,000 frames per second. The real time duration of shooting a GlamBot is literally 1 to 1.5 seconds. It's so fast. But when we slow it down in post, it is this really like drawn out epic sort of clip. And I usually get talent to do these cool big actions. So they're like moving in slow motion and it feels like a natural Dolly-in movement, but it's just super slow motion and super epic. So I was really surprised at seeing, you know, the behind the scenes where it happens in an instant and then you see the result and it's like this super drawn out thing. And I think I started posting those together just because I had the media. And then it just dawned on me, it's like, this is really cool. Like this is what I should be doing. Like this before and after.
Right, because the finished product is still cool, but there's something really just neat that you kind of see how fast the arm is moving, and even you, I think you've got this really amazing personality too on camera, where you're, you know, like you've got this beautiful hair, and you're always dressed up nicely, and you're always kind of fun to, you know, it's like nice energy, and there is something about that behind the scenes experience. So yeah, I think you really nailed it on that.
Yeah. I think you're totally right. And it surprised me because I always thought it was so much more just the process of it all and seeing the talent. But I mean, a lot of people sort of touch on what you just mentioned is like this personality-ness to it where I'm interacting with these celebrities in a really fun, kind of manner. And that's a draw. So I think there's a lot of little aspects, but essentially I started filming behind the scenes and then making just that, the BTS moment of me directing and then the final product. And that bit of content was the thing that really just launched my career to the next level. Because for whatever reason, they're super viral and people watch them until the very end because you have to see the result. And my socials pretty much exploded after that.
Welcome back. So obviously the part that I take away from that is that Cole was able to by hustling, by working hard, figure out, okay, there's this disconnect, right? I'm posting the same videos that E is posting, and it's not really doing anything for me. Even though it's Brad Pitt or Katy Perry or whatever, it's not really growing like it should be. But as soon as he introduced a personal element, which was himself, into this video, that's when it really took off. So I'm so happy. He's got a TV show now on Hulu called Exposure. So man, that guy, he just follow him on Instagram and check out his stories. He never quits. So Cole, here's to you, man. Just love what you're doing. All right, moving on. The next moneymaker is investing in either the stock market or venture capital, cryptocurrency. We talked about all that. And the little clip that I have is from episode number 3. It's composer Chad Rehmann, and he's talking about some interesting things there. Let's listen to it.
I'm constantly looking out on how can I capitalize on my IP, on my intellectual property. Mm-hmm. One of the amazing things that happened at my master's program is one of the first days we put up it was a huge whiteboard. And the first question that they ever asked us is, how do you make money off of music? And I thought, oh man, I got this. Like I had 7 or 8 things, and we had over 70, 75 things up there. And I was looking at that list thinking, this is why I need this class. This is why I need this master's, because sometimes it's the whole, you don't know what you don't know. And, there was all these opportunities that hadn't even crossed my mind on how to capitalize on an asset. And I had to start looking at my music as it's an asset, and I need to be able to get it out there. And if it's sitting on my shelf, it's not making money. So where are the avenues that I can put it? And sometimes it's super random Eastern European magic shows. You just never know.
Okay. Let me ask you this now. Now that you're making money, you're doing well, money's coming in, you got 75% royalties. What are you doing to keep that money around? Are you investing it in different things? Are you doing real estate or stocks or anything like that? Something that's growing your money?
Yeah. So my wife has her own business as well. And so what we both do is, one of the best things I think we ever did was we each set up our SEP, which is our individual
SEP IRA.
IRA plan. And the reason I like that is twofold. As opposed to 401k, which isn't applicable to us anyways, because we don't have access to that because we don't have an employer. Mm-hmm. It's completely, it's self-directed. You can just get
invested in anything.
Yeah, right. You can get individual stocks, ETFs, index funds, whatever you want. But what I love about it is you don't have to make those contributions before the end of the year. Right?
You can back rate it.
Exactly. You can do it up until you file your taxes. So what I love about it is if we have a great year, our CPA will come to us and say, okay, you guys had a good year, and you either have to pay the government X amount or just put this much more into your SEP.
And it grows in retirement, and you pay taxes on it when you retire. Yep.
And so it's kind of a no-brainer. It's I can give what, 10 grand to the government, or I can, write a check to myself essentially for this much money. Yeah. And so for us, that's been a great way to kind of offset good years.
Yeah, man. I just think that there's so much tax advantage stuff that I can't wait till we get a CPA on the podcast to kind of break down some of those things. But what he said about, essentially writing himself a check when he kind of is able to, at the end of the year, go through his finances, see where he's doing good, see where he's doing not so good, and say, you know what, instead of owing a bunch of taxes this year, let's just write a check to the our IRA account, SEP IRA, and we'll have that money in retirement. So that's a really fascinating, especially as freelance, because your money fluctuates so much. Some years you're going to have a lot of money, and you're going to need to put some of that in towards something like a SEP IRA to offset some of those taxes. Other years you won't make as much, and so it would be beneficial not to put as much into a SEP IRA. Maybe a Roth IRA, perhaps, where it goes in tax already taxed because your tax bracket is lower that year, and then grows tax free. Anyway, so yeah, it was really fascinating. I loved listening to Chad's episode. It was episode number 3. Now the next one is to buy assets. We've had a lot of guests on the podcast that have bought assets and done really well with them. I'm one of them. That's my bread and butter is my camera and grip and electric trucks. The episode that I chose to focus on was Mike Miller. I already mentioned it. Episode number 2. He is a 50-50 owner of MWP, an editing house, post-production house. They also do a lot of directing now. But he owns a lot of real estate, a lot of single-family homes and multifamily homes in Southern California. And he's done very well with those investments over the last couple decades. So here we go. I personally think, and I'm going to project a little bit on you, but I think that you were interested in real estate because it was something that you had more control of.
Total control. To the point where I bought one property out of state, and that property went bad on me. And I bought it with a family member, and that went bad. And so I was advised never to have property in that you couldn't drive by at night and check and tuck it in. And opportunities have come up that way, and I no longer buy any money that I can't control or property that I can't control. I like to be close by, and I advise people not to. I had a niece who rented a little place, and she went out of country, and 2 months later she's calling me and she says, I have renters who aren't paying, and it's like, it's tough to evict when you're not even there, and it's just tough. My dad did that a couple times, and that's why he did not like real estate as much as I did.
And you do your own property management.
We do.
Which I think is rare for...
It is. And I don't know if I'll always do it, but because eventually I would... My wife right now says, when are we going to enjoy some of the fruits of our labor?
Your labor, your 30-year labor.
And I actually, I'm going to start listening to her more. And I don't mind.
Smart man.
But I'm lucky to have had a daughter and a son-in-law to have had a little property management experience. And I'm hoping that I can kind of keep that in the family a little bit, because I'll feel better about paying a manager who feels about the property almost as much as I do, rather than looking at it as though it's just a business. So I'm going to try to do that. But it's interesting that even with the heyday and everything, that the investments in real estate have been almost equal to what
MWP's done.
What I've done on other sides. That being said, I probably, had I stayed a DJ and stayed working the weddings all these years, I probably would have made more money.
No, you wouldn't have.
Because I would have had 50 DJs working under me or something.
Sure.
I never thought that business would take off. I mean, my gosh, even the video part of it. Who would have thought someone would pay $10,000 for a
wedding video?
Never.
Yeah.
Never. So that would have been part of it. We would have done,
the whole thing, the photography and video and DJing
the food
and the food and the chairs and the tables and the whole nine.
So that being said, it's like, and that's the thing, is that I knew when I first started in the business, I started at the lowest. I worked for free to get the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. I think people, think it's beneath them, but it shouldn't be. If you really, really, really want something, you'll find a way to do it, or you'll find an excuse not to do it. Mm-hmm. And if you're finding excuses, I don't think you really want it enough,
or it's just not the right. It's
not right for you. So I just do believe that it'll happen for you if you really want it enough, and you'll find a way.
Do you consider yourself a lucky person?
Very lucky. And the harder I work, the luckier I get.
All right. Now let's move on to the final moneymaker, which is spending less, right? And this is an important one for creatives because it is feast and famine. How many times have I said feast and famine on this podcast? Probably too many to count. I don't even know, right? I've got 18 episodes, 19 with this one, and I just said it twice. So I'll say it again, feast and famine. It's probably 100 times now on this podcast because there's going to be great months, great years, and bad months and bad years, right? And so figuring out how to keep your expenses low not only helps you with your income that you are making to pay less taxes, but it also keeps the overheads low so that you don't get into trouble when you have a bad year. So we are going to listen to JP Morgan. He was episode number 4 on the podcast, talk about some of his highs and lows of his 30-year career. And I really just absolutely love what he has to say in the entire podcast. We're good friends, and so it was a lot of fun for me to have him on. But this little snippet, too, you're going to really enjoy. So here we go. Talk to me about some of the feast or famine mentalities of our industry. And how to kind of cope with that stuff. So obviously you had some amazing years. You talked about $150,000 photo shoot, for a computer company, and I'm sure there were multiple that year. Talk to me about some of the good years versus the bad, and what you were able to do to try and smooth that over.
I always worked. We always had more than one stream of income coming in. We realized very early on that stock photography was emerging. It used to be stock photography was really bad pictures of really dumb things, but then all of a sudden stock photography started to look a little more advertising. It looked a little more polished. And so we created a catalog. We printed up a catalog of all of our images that we had shot for ourselves, and we mailed that out to all the art directors. And all of a sudden we had a big income coming in from stock photography. We were selling our own stock photography. So we're always looking for different things to do, because no matter, it's such a weird journey, because you never arrive. And if you do arrive, if there is a peak, you don't see it till you're on your way down.
Oh dear, that's
true.
Tragic.
Yeah, I mean, I see the peak now of the '90s, late '90s,
yes,
into the 2000s. Yeah. I can see it now, but at the time I thought, well, why isn't everyone still doing this? I should be doing this forever, But no, it was the peak, and I think creatives have a tendency to hold on to the direction and the way they do things too long, because they find out, that they have to hit the bottom. It's almost like when you have an addiction. They have to hit the bottom, and I'm just plain not making any money, and I'm going to lose my shirt, and so I've got to change something. And unfortunately, for a lot of creatives, that's the decision they make, and that's how they do it.
Yeah. Did you ever hit the bottom?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a 2-picture deal at Warner Brothers, working on getting a feature done. And in just like one day, the door opened and a messenger dropped a box of stuff at the bottom of the steps where I had my office. And I went down to look at the box, and it was all my materials from my agent that was carrying me for doing feature work. And my agent dropped me the same day. I hadn't had any still work for several weeks. And then 9/11 happened right after that. And then I got sick, which was a whole nother story. And it was probably the worst few years of my life. There's no doubt about it. I should have let my space go sooner than I did, because people weren't shooting on stages anymore. The guy next door to me was really he was a photographer, had a great business going. He was shooting for Macy's, making a ton of money. And he came over one day and said, "Yeah, I'm moving out of my space." And I'm going, "Really? Why is that?" He goes, "I lost my client, Macy's." I said, "Really? Are you going to try to get other clients?" He goes, "I hope so, but I'm shutting down my space." And I'm thinking to myself, you lost one client? You're shutting down your space?
Yeah.
But it was his biggest client. It was his major income, and he wasn't going to let himself fall into a deep hole with a lot of debt, so he got himself out of his space, went and looked for more work, and started doing some other things. And so he made an immediate decision that I'm way too slow about that. I sat in that huge space, 4,500 square foot studio space.
I was over in the brewery, right?
At the brewery. Huge space. I loved that space. It was just a big workspace, and it was so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Loved it. But I held on to it too long, paying that rent for way too long.
Yeah. So what other what helped you survive that time?
It was the other streams of income. If we didn't have stock photography, I did a cartoon for a while. I had a single panel Sunday cartoon with my images. And that made some money for a while. Commercials started to work, so I started to do a lot of commercial work, directing. And then eventually, when the whole Mark, 2 that came out from Canon,
5D Mark II,
5D Mark II, it's like all of a sudden I'm going, you know what? I don't need all these huge cameras. I don't need all these huge crews. I can do a little more guerrilla style stuff. And I had always been stuck in this mentality of, well, I want a big job, and I want that big job to pay me, $10,000 to $20,000 in creative fees and usage fees. And that's how I make my living. I don't do little jobs, because little jobs are just, they just too much. They take too much time. I don't make much money. And the guy who bought my house several years back was a friend. I knew him. He was a creative guy. He's a director. He used to be a producer. And he was shooting at about $1,500 a day, but he was shooting 15 days a month.
Oh, wow.
And so,
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I'm going, wait a minute, he's making a super good living, because $1,500 a day, plus then he does editing afterwards if he's doing film pieces. And I'm going, and he's super busy. And I can't say he always has 15 days a month, but the concept of you don't have to charge a fortune, but you have to find a good place in the market where you can charge a good rate, but then you try to work as much as you can, and in that you can make a.
Isn't that the opposite though of as you get older and more experienced? Shouldn't you be charging more and more and working less and less?
It's fascinating because the creative industry is like any industry. There's Tom Cruise, and then there's everybody else.
Oh, so you're not Tom Cruise?
No.
Why are you on the podcast, man? Why am I interviewing you? We should get Tom Cruise on this thing.
So I snuck in here.
Yeah.
No, it's a matter of, in my day, I was super well known. Everyone knew my work. You were at the top of your game, but it's hard to hold on to that. Every creative person, whether it's an actor or it doesn't matter who it is, every creative person faces this renewal of your career problem constantly. You have to reinvent yourself, recreate yourself, and move ahead. And some can do it and stay on top, and others can't. And so it was a lot of lean years making those transitions, but I made a couple of great transitions, and and looking back, always been able to sustain our family. Had bought a nice house in California. I guess I always say in California, I'm house poor and I have a poor house, but that's a whole nother story.
No, you have a beautiful house. You're on a half acre. I love your property.
Yeah, I love our property too. So. But anyway, I don't want to sound too down about it. It's just
I'm depressed over here, JP.
No, you shouldn't be. It's the hard thing about it is that when you go through the downs, you've got to react more quickly, get another stream of income going as fast as you can, and don't look back and think it's going to be the way it was, because that's usually going to take your energy away from looking forward and figuring out what it's going to be.
All right, guys. Well, I think we did good. That was fun for me. I think we're going to do this every once in a while. Every time I think of something that I want to talk about, I'll pull some of my favorite clips from previous episodes, and we'll throw them in the podcast and do a little mashup. So everybody doing well? I hope so. What have I been working on? Let's see. I just did a spot for Shein. It's a clothing company that's pretty big, I guess, in China and Mexico and some other countries. It's pretty big here, but it was fun, man. We shot it on large format camera with anamorphic lenses, and just got some really neat things. And then they had like a big premiere. It was called Shein Fest, and it we had it play up on this massive screen. And anyway, it was a blast. We were in one of those infinite LED cyc walls, and they had live show. We had Nick Jonas and Tinashe and some other artists and stuff. But anyway, great stuff coming up. I'm doing a SoCal Gas commercial or two in the next week, and then I'm off to do a film in Salt Lake City at the end of May, early June. So lots going on. I'm excited to share the journey with you guys. So stick around, and we'll see you next week.